Hi, I'm Anna Brewster. Welcome to Art Club for April. This month we're going to be painting some tulips because the sun is shining, and you might have noticed I'm outside for a change because it seemed too nice not to. So I hope you're going to join me in painting some flowers, see what you can find in your garden, and let's get going. Okay, so I'm outdoors. You might be able to hear the birds and things going on over there. And what I've got here is a sheet of tin foil, just bog standard foil that you get from the supermarket. I've crunched it up really hard, and then what I've done is I've kind of flattened it back out again. Because I'm outdoors and it's a little bit breezy, I've stuck it down, but if you're doing this inside you don't need to. It will be absolutely fine exactly how it is. So what you've got here is quite a textured surface. There's a bit of a pattern going on, but there's lots of sort of places where little rivulets will be able to land and paint will be able to pool, which is what I'm relying on to make an interesting picture. So let's get going. Rightio, so what we're going to do, I'm going to start thinking about where I want things to be on the paper. I'm going to use some bright and funky colours here. Tulips are often a very weird sort of colour. If you mix some pink with some orange, you probably get something to an approximation of them. I'm going to start dropping that on. Lots and lots of paint here, and it might look like it's not going to go anywhere. It's all sort of bubbling all over the place. That's absolutely fine at this point. I can make up a bit more, slightly different pink, because I've got those fierce ones. Got some of that over there. You can really run riot with this, it doesn't matter. There's some red in it as well, just making one big puddle. Because some of them are a little bit more purpley, so if I get, there's some cobalt trying to get involved here, so I'm going to let it. And you can see I'm just sort of smushing it on, and I'm going to have to work fairly quick purely because I'm outdoors and the sun is actually happening today, so it's quite bright. Greens, let's have a think about this. So I've got quite a nice green, but I want to push that slightly towards a slightly bluier colour, because tulips are quite, you see what I've got here, I've actually made it quite bluey. And we're going to get some of that going on. Just going to, that was a bit of sap green with a bit of ultramarine in it. Here we go. I'm going to put a fair bit of that near the bottom because I want something to kind of anchor the picture down, but you can put little bits of it further up. You don't have to paint all the way to the edges of everything. I'm going to make one large dark green area near the bottom down here, just so I don't waste that bit of the paper. There we go. So we've got quite a lot of colour going on here, and as you can see, it's sort of sitting in puddles at the moment. That is absolutely fine. What's going to happen when I press the paper on is we're going to be taking a print of this. So this is going to be quite difficult to do with one hand. Who knows how this will pan out, but I'm going to do it with one hand because I haven't got my camera stand with me today and I am working from home. Ready. So this is just ordinary Copier paper, and I am going to squash it on. You can hear the foil is crunching slightly underneath my hand. I'm going to squash it on and squash as much of that paint onto it as I possibly can. I'm picking it all up. You may find if you've gone in like full on with the paint, you may find that some of it kind of smooshes out the edges. That is absolutely fine, providing you're not on your best tablecloth. And you can feel the texture of the print that you're making here. So you want to keep it nice and flat. Don't allow it to move around. You want those lines, you want that definition. Will you stop doing that, please? Silly bit of paper. Hold on. There we go. So flatten that completely, and I've got it right down to the bottom, pressing all the way. Okay, I think we're ready to pull that one now. So pull it off, and we get this rather interesting. Let's see if I can bring it around here and put some stones on it so it doesn't blow away. Rather interesting print. There's one. There's another one. Now it can't escape. That's better. So we've got all sorts of different colours happening here. And what I'm going to do with this is just let it dry a little bit. I might actually do another one, because why not? We'll have a couple on the go. I'll see if I can get even more paint on the next one, because the more paint you can get on it, the more fun you can have with it later. Okay, so this is the second one I've made, and you can see it's actually coming through the paper in places. I've really loaded this one with paint, so let's pull this one as well, so we've got set. Ooh, ho, ho, ho. That's rather nice. So you can see we've got all sorts of interesting things happening on this paper, loads of different colours. I'm going to leave these to dry, which is going to take about 30 seconds in this temperature, and then we shall get going with the next layer. So what we've got now here is the dried picture, and this print there has got lots of interesting textures all over it. We've got some very soft areas of colour up here. It's all sorts of interesting things going on, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of these shapes that have naturally occurred to draw on some of the flowers that I can see in front of me, which are right there. That's the plan. So I'm sitting right in front of them, and it will help. I mean, why not buy yourself a bunch of flowers? Go out in the garden, go and find a bluebell wood, something like that. This is a nice thing to do based on what you're seeing in front of you. So what I'm going to start doing is thinking about where I can put those shapes. I'm going to start sketching in with just a pencil, because what I don't want to do is make it... you're not looking for, oh look, I need to find a perfect petal shape to do this. You just want to roughly find the shapes that you want to put in, and you know, if something happens to, like for example here there's a nice little curve, I'm going to use that, but it doesn't matter that there isn't one the other side. You're just aiming to kind of roughly put in the shapes that you want. That'll be the sound of all my paper blowing away. Never mind, we're in full flow now. I'm not stopping. And these tulips, happily, they're all leaning that way. They're actually doing that in front of me. So I'm going to be leaning them all in that direction. I've got one here, and they've got this very kind of... we all know what a tulip looks like. They've got a very definite shape that I'm going to try and just get in there. Another one down here. So there's going to be quite a kind of a feeling of movement across in this direction with this picture. So that's going to go there. And then some of the leaves, tulip leaves are very, very big, generally. So I'm going to just sketch in a few. The nice thing about this is you don't have to worry too much about... so you can see up here I've just put a leaf in here, but there isn't really anything to match up exactly. It's just there's a little bit of green, and that will be plenty to give an indication that there's something leafy going on. So I've probably got a lot of pencil sketching there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use some ink on it, and the reason... normally I wouldn't bother with a pencil sketch, but I wanted you to kind of see how I was mapping that out before I hit it with the ink, which is what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to get out an ink and a little stick to do some drawing with. If you haven't got a bottle of ink at home, you could use anything really. I mean, if you've got a Sharpie marker or a nice thick felt tip pen, something like that, just to get a bit of sort of definite line going on your work. So I'm going to start that now. I'm just going to unscrew the ink. I will need my other hand for that, therefore I will be back in 1 second. Okie dokie, so we're going to play a very dangerous game, which is called balance a bottle of Payne's Grey acrylic ink on your knees on a board. I've anchored it down with a couple of stones here because the whole thing is flapping about like mad, so I hope this isn't too shaky. This tool that I'm using is one that I made a little while ago, and it is it's a matchstick stuck in the end of an elder twig, and I really quite like it, so that's what I'm going to be using today. But again, anything you've got lying about, a dip pen, if you haven't got a dip pen, any sort of drawing implement will do just fine. And you just... what you want ideally is something that isn't making too... you don't want the lines to be too regular. If you can find something that does break the line up a little bit, that would be ideal, because otherwise what you'll find is you end up with these incredibly hard lines, and it just doesn't work like that really, this sort of drawing. It's too scratchy and scruffy, and it wants something a little bit scratchier and scruffier when it comes to your line making. So I'm going to just put in one tulip there. I might leave some of them as pencil. The reason for that is because it will just break the drawing up a little bit. Right, so we've got Another one coming down here. I've got a leaf coming up here. I've made the rookie error of starting on the left-hand side of the paper, and obviously I am left-handed, so I'm now going to have to doing it at arm's reach. That was very silly. Dear oh dear. Got excited about there being sunshine today, and it's obviously gone to my head. Right, okay, let's get this one in. Now, this is just nasty copier paper. It's not fancy paper. It's not my usual fancy Bockingford paper that I usually use, my watercolour paper. And I've done that deliberately, partly because I want Art Club to be something that if you've got any of the gear at home, you can give it a go. But also because I was just interested to see what would happen on this thinner paper. How would the paint respond? And what would it do? Actually, it gives you quite an interesting... It's a little bit different. I think I'm going to end up with a very kind of crunchy picture that's not going to want to unflat. It's not going to want to flatten itself very much. Hang on, let's just make sure I've got what I'm doing actually in the picture. Right, okay, that's better. Yeah, it's quite interesting drawing on different paper once in a while. And copier paper has a lot of uses. If you've got a good like a sketchbook, that would be really good for this. Had I had one to hand, I probably would have used that instead. Just something with a little bit more heft to it would have been quite nice. Let's see what we can do with this corner over here. So this corner's got a lot of paint in it. As you can see, I don't get a huge amount of ink on this. But that's fine. It means there's lots of places where the ink just sort of tails off, and I'm fine with that. Oh, one a little bit more closed here, maybe another one. And then we've got this big leaf coming down here. Another one up there. You're going to end up with something that's got a lot of abstract going on, really. It's not going to be a very literal picture. But I quite like things that are a bit abstract, so that's absolutely fine. Anyway, we're just playing, aren't we? That is what Art Club is about. It's about playing, trying out new techniques. I think that's probably all the ink I'm going to want to put on there. So what we've got here is we've got a fair amount of line work, but I'm not overpowering the colour. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some colour around some of these bits just to pep them up a bit once it's dry. With ink, the rule is if you can see shiny bits, I don't know if you can see that shiny bit there. If it still looks shiny, be really, really cautious about what you do with it, because if you are not, you will smudge absolutely everything. So happily, it's sunny. I'm going to leave it in the sun for 10 minutes, and when it's dry, I'm going to come back with some coloured pencils to go over the top. Okay, so what we're going to do now is do a little bit of colouring in. Now, I've got my flowers in front of me, and I've got some nice pencil crayons here, but honestly, any pencil crayon you've got is absolutely fine. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pencil crayons, just add a little bit of extra colour to the places where there are flowers. I'll just add a little bit of colour, not masses. I don't want to lose the marks that are made with the printing. As I said before, you need to make sure before you do anything like this that everything is bone dry. Each layer needs to be dry before you hit it with the next medium. Otherwise, what you'll find is that everything smudges like mad, and you don't really want to lose all the lines that you've got going on here. Just going to colour in. You can see where I colour this bit here, where I'm colouring over the top of the watercolour, you get this darker area of colour, which is quite nice, going up to a paler area at the top of the flower. Just going to colour that in as well. You don't need to be too fastidious, maybe is the word. You don't need to be too precious about where the edges are. And you certainly don't need to make sure you colour in every single last bit. It's more fun to leave a few bits just happening as they were when you took the print. Now I'm going to just have a bit of I've got a yellowy sort of colour here, which is quite a nice colour for blending, and it's going to help me get to that slightly odd peachy orange colour that I've got with the tulips, which I didn't really capture as much as I would have liked with that first layer. So I'm going to layer a bit of that over the top just to change the colour, and then layer it up with the pink. And whatever pencil crayons you've got at home, they will do this really well. Just do a little bit more down here, get some of that nice rich pink coming through, and then these are the pencils I'm using, in case you're interested, are Faber-Castell ones. They're polychromos. They're basically pencil crayons, but they've got a slight oiliness to them that I really like. Makes them a little bit harder to rub out, but all pencil crayons are good, so whatever you've got to hand. You can see how interesting that starts to look. We've got all sorts of interesting colours hitting other colours. And of course, when you're looking at something like a flower in the light, and we'll just go back up to the flowers I've got here again, you can see there are areas where they're almost white, where the light is hitting them really, really hard. You get that contrast even on one flower, and that is why we can get away with leaving whole areas white, because that's actually what you're seeing when you are looking at the real thing. It's easier in a way if you're working from a photo, because you can see those contrasts straight away. There we go, get some lovely rich colour going on here. And get some on here as well, with this nice yellow that I've got. What else are we going to do? So I've got the green as well. Let's talk about the green. White pencil crayons in a set never get a lot of love, do they? Because nobody ever colours in anything white. But actually, if you are trying to achieve that sort of weird greeny white colour that things like tulips often are, they're quite useful. You see, it's I can blend them. I can blend the white into the other one. It's worth having a go. Whatever your pencil crayons are, it's worth having a little go at some of that, because you may find actually you can get some really nice colours from blending your pencil crayons together. Obviously, if you've got fancy art ones, and these are not madly expensive art ones, which is a good job, because I don't know if you heard that, but one of them just fell on the floor from quite a height. But they're sort of mid-range. There's a lot of similar ones, Caran d'Ache Luminance, and all sorts of other ones that do the same sort of job. So I'm just making the leaf bits, just filling out some of those gaps a little bit to just bolster the picture, the colour in the picture. And I will carry on doing that for a little bit once I've picked up the pencil crayon off the floor, and let's see where we end up. Okay, so I think that's about it. Take the giant rock off it first, that would help, wouldn't it? Tulips down there, and tulips up there. And it's been a little bit of fun. Nice to get the coloured pencils out again. I don't do that often. And you can see there we've got these lovely colours, which is what spring is all about, isn't it? Lovely colours and a bit of sunshine. So I hope you've enjoyed Art Club this month, and I'd be very, very interested to see what your pictures look like. So if you have been trying this out at home, send me a picture. You can find me on social media. I'm Sidmouth Skies on Instagram. I'm Anna Brewster Art everywhere else. And I would love to see how you get on. I will see you again in May. Happy painting.